Aloha and welcome
Aloha.
to, yes, aloha and everybody, aloha and welcome to Author Talk with Lori. I'm coming to you from the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii. I am super excited about my guest today, Salima Nimoy. Her book is Since I Lost My Baby, and I think you have a copy of it, right? If you want to hold it up, because
Yeah.
it glares on the Kindle. This is her book. Salima, I'm so excited to talk to you about your book. I
Thank
loved
you.
every word of it. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. And aloha to you too, Lori. Thank you for inviting me to participate with you today.
Yes, yes, of course. And so, well, I let's just dive right into chapter one, which is um, well. Let me just start with this. I love the themes that you have throughout, and one of the big ones is music, which the title of your book is the name of a song. Since I Lost My Baby.
Yes, that's a song by the Temptations that was written by Smokey Robinson.
Yes, okay, and I can't wait to get to the Smokey Robinson part. I felt like that was a real turning point. But there was a windy road getting to that part. So you start off with kind of a dramatic time in your life as a teenager. Got pregnant and had to um, kind of in that era of time. Teenage girls were maybe frowned upon a little bit, but in your case, you got sent to a home for pregnant
Unwed
teenagers.
Mothers.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
unwed mothers. So what was that like?
It was like the cuckoo's nest. I, I got pregnant the day school let out for in June of 66. And I just was in complete denial about it. Who would have thought? And then my mother found my something of mine in my room. And so as soon as my parents realized that I was pregnant, they were going to try to hide it from everyone. So they sent me to live in a home for unwed mothers called the Florence Crittenton Home
Mm-hmm.
in Los Angeles in November of 1966. And my daughter was born in 1967. And it was really like being incarcerated and
Mm-hmm.
punished. It was very, very uh, difficult, brainwashing kind of an experience, the denial of who you are, trying to fix you, asking me the stupid question over and over again. Why did you get pregnant? Well, I guess because I had sex, and trying to apply a lot of negativity to my life, a lot of shame and all that kind of stuff. And then the thing that was crazy about it was uh, I left there in April of 67
Mm-hmm.
and immediately was thrown out into the counterculture, the summer of love,
Mm-hmm.
hippies and burn your bra and free sex and free love and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, well, what did I just go get punished for 6 months for doing? I
Yes.
was forced to, my baby was taken away from me after I saw her once in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to sign relinquishment papers. And so I left there trying to kind of like fit the mold of what my family wanted me to be because I
Yeah.
had been so ashamed of, been so shamed into what I had done
Mm-hmm.
for their sakes, not for mine.
Yeah.
Um, I was in a lot of pain, but I was forced to really shut that down at having to lose my child and not being
Yes.
able to have a relationship with her. And then 3 months later, my parents wanted to reward me
Mm-hmm.
for my high school graduation, which was ridiculous because I didn't graduate high school. They just told me, "You're smart. We don't want you back. You're a bad influence. We're just going to send you a diploma in the mail
Wow.
from the School for Handicapped Children." So I saw that in Monterey, they were going to have a pop festival. And my favorite artist, Otis Redding, was going to be performing. So
Mm-hmm.
I told them that was where I wanted to go. And it was a good thing I didn't ask them to take me to see Jimi Hendrix, because if you've ever seen that, they came with me, they would have really lost it over seeing him, what he did to his guitar. And once I got there, it was the first time I ever saw, the counterculture begin at work. And I just knew that I was going to exit stage left and go into that.
Yes, because you do. One of the quotes is your world just split from theirs. Generationally, the new counterculture, for your world split from your parents, or kind of from your home life with the counterculture and the hippie movement, if you will. And so as a teenager, you discovered Motown and music and began going to a place where you could dance, like
right.
Yes,
exactly. I thought life was just a complete series of irrelevant, unrelated moments. I did not fit into anything in my community, in my household, or whatever. I was just different. And a neighbor got some free tickets in 1964 when I was 14 years old to go see the taping of what was called the Tammy Show at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. And that was the moment that my life just really changed, because I saw this very iconic performance of James Brown and the Famous Flames at the Tammy Show, which pretty much most people have seen. He's wearing a checkered jacket. It's like, he even said that was the greatest performance of his life.
Wow.
And it just blew me away. I mean, if you watch the video of the Tammy Show, which is on YouTube, you see all these girls just screaming their head off, losing it in the audience. That was me, because I'd never seen anybody act like that. And that was how I felt. I wanted to act out. I wanted to express myself. And my family's opinion was, just take 2 aspirin and lay down. And so when I saw somebody actually doing it, I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know anything about soul music. I didn't know anything about anything. I just said, that's where I'm going with this. And I just figured, because it resonated for me, it was good. And so I started going to dances at a teen center. I think I was like 14, 15, on Saturday nights. And then I got introduced to Motown and Stax and all the soul music, and it just really resonated for me. And I kept wanting to know, like, what's in this? I mean, what's in this music that is just pulling me to this place? And also, I discovered myself as a dancer, and that transformed itself over the years into, I was an African dancer. I took African dance classes for 40 years.
Yes.
Which is the part of the path I went on of finding out where a lot of the things that I was in love with came from, which was Africa and the church. So that was how that happened. And then I split from my parents because my parents couldn't relate to what I was doing.
Yes. Yeah.
And they tried to give me the 2 aspirin to lay down. I was like, sorry, I'm not going there anymore.
Yes.
And so I just took my transistor radio and decided to learn my lessons of life from Motown, which was a very bad idea, because they were telling me stuff like, I could never love another after loving you. My whole world ended the moment you left me.
Yes.
And that kind of thing. And I just thought, okay, so love is about being hurt and then just slobbering and begging someone like James Brown, please, please, please,
yes,
to get them to like you. And obviously that did not work out well in my relationships.
Yeah. So you kind of are, you've had to give a child up for adoption that was kind of forced on you and done in a very unpleasant way, kind of a sad way, just go home and pretend it never happened.
Right.
And then music comes into your life, right? And teaches you that I'll never love somebody else, all those things. And it basically sets you up for this. I don't think this is a Motown song, but it sets you up for looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And
Yes.
looking for what I thought was love, but really wasn't.
Yes.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? I didn't even really know what love was. And that was part of what kept drawing me. It was partly the music, and then it was partly like, okay, I want that feeling, but where is it? Because all I keep getting is hurt.
Yes. And that the hurt, and the losses. But I just love that you finally find the feeling. But so you have to go through, some bad relationships, and you call them, I like that you get your lesson kind of from each one. Um, and so you've found out that love is what the Motown lyrics say, right?
No, I found
The
out
sad
that isn't
ones,
what the
or isn't what
it
they
wasn't
say.
what the Motown
It
lyrics
was it was.
said.
But so you meet, and I also love that you call your boyfriends the piano player or the poet and those kinds of things. And so you meet kind of your first the piano player, which I was the one that you traveled around with, kind of traveled through Europe and.
No,
Okay.
no. Um,
Marvin was who you traveled
well,
around
that
with.
was, I was in college. I went to college after I got out of the Home for Unwed Mothers. But it only lasted I only went to class for 6 months. This was in 1967. And, as soon as I got in there, it was like, hey, we're on strike. And so, this is a phenomenon of when the culture is in a communal sense of grief or anger or rage or pain or whatever, people come together, and a lot of times you're not just there for the issue, you're bringing your own rage, your own
Yes.
pain, your own
Yes.
anger, your own grief. And so I certainly had social consciousness, but at the same time, a lot of what was fueling me was just anger that I had to suppress at what had happened to me. And I'd had to suppress it because I had made a vow that I was being forced to give away my daughter for adoption. And I had made a vow to myself never to look back and regret that, because I did not have a choice.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, but that didn't make it go away. So
Right.
I was angry. So after, one semester going to class, all of the teachers I had were like, I'll give you straight A's if you go out there and demonstrate out in the quad. So that's what I did for 3 years. And I met a character named Marvin, who was Jewish, but my parents still hated him too. And we traveled through Europe for 3 months. And that gave me a whole other perspective in 1970 on what I was doing, because here we were going to college and demonstrating and protesting, but we only had the freedom to do that because either the people we were protesting, our parents or the government, were paying for us to go to college. So I quit that and just became a worker. And I didn't ever really have a formal education, but I managed to wind up okay anyway.
Yes, you had education through exposure and experience. That was kind of one of the
Right.
things. I thought she's had so much experience and exposure to so many different things. I mean, you really had a full life, even though some parts of it, were very painful and sad.
Kind of a Forrest Gump sort of a thing for me. I really didn't plan anything. And this part of it isn't in the book, but I mean, at one point I had a job working in the basement of a old folks home for Italian Americans. And I was working for a newspaper, and a fax came in from the White House saying, do you guys want to send someone with the White House press corps? And so I got to go on that.
Oh, wow.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And here I am sitting next to Wolf Blitzer, and I don't even have really my diplomas from the School for Handicapped Children. So
yeah. See, so many great things just in synchronicities, that's another, big
Right.
theme in your book, happen. But you do have to go through some abusive relationships. One of them was really bad. Um, and one of the things um, that you also say in the book, that it was from your friend Bonnie. I think she was one of your African dance teachers, um, and she was kind of in a similar relationship as you were, an abusive one. But what struck me about that was what she said, and then what resonated with you was, I just don't think I could do any better.
No, it wasn't Bonnie that said that to me,
Sorry, I'm getting the names mixed
but
up.
that's okay. Uh, I was in a very abusive relationship when I was in my middle 20s because I just honestly, I was stupid, and I hadn't gotten any training on what to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I came within about 15 minutes of dying from an ectopic pregnancy. And my person that I was with was very hateful and, wanted to come to the hospital and kill me when he found out what happened, burned down my house and all that stuff. And I just was in this place where I just didn't value myself at all.
Yeah.
And one night in the hospital, I had been in a private room, and they wheeled in this elderly woman, and I did not ask her a question.
That's right.
And then
Yeah.
out of nowhere, I call her Mrs. Hayes. I think that's what I called her. She starts to tell me the story of her life. And she's in her 60s, and she tells me this terrible story of how she was married to this man who just beat her and abused her and all these terrible things. And I still didn't ask her anything. And then she hits the clincher, which is, well, I guess I've been staying all these years because I just didn't think I could do no better. And I was like,
Oh,
bam,
yeah. Yeah.
Salima, you're less than half this lady's age, and that's what you're telling yourself. And I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yes.
that's something that women, I guess everybody in some way, but people tell themselves
Yeah.
about their personal relationships, about their jobs, about their children, about everything in their lives. I can't do no better. Well,
Yes.
you know what? You can.
Yes.
You always can.
Yeah.
And if you think like that, you might as well just end it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she left the room. She was taken out of the room. And I don't even know to this day, was that even real, or did I just hallucinate it? I think it was real. But that really stuck with me a lot. And the friend of mine, Bonnie, and forgive me because right now I can't remember if this was before or after. I think it was after I was in the hospital, was my age, 27. She was a dance teacher that I took classes from. And I saw her one day in the supermarket and said, oh, I'm going to come by and see you one day and take a class. But I didn't for a month. Yeah. And when I finally went back, which was after this man, that my partner, the piano player, tried to kill me, I found out she had been murdered by her boyfriend. Yeah. And the reason was, they said, well, you know how Bonnie was? She was just really nice, and she was trying to break up with him, and he didn't want to let her go. So he killed her, and then he killed himself.
Oh, yeah.
And I just immediately, I saw myself dead. And people saying, well, you know how Salima was? She was just really nice, trying to make him understand. Listen, if I talk to any woman that is trying to talk her way out of a relationship, I just say, stop now, leave. Because abusers and narcissists and people who want to hurt you, they will take any kind of engagement whatsoever, even if it's just getting you to get on the phone and say, no, I don't want to do this. Just stop.
Yeah.
And that changed. That was as pivotal as the old lady in the hospital, because from that moment I quit playing around
Yes.
with people that wanted to hurt me. And someone had said to me during that time, well, all these bad things come to you because you let them. And I'm like, oh, please get out of there. No, it was true. Once I made up my mind, didn't matter what I said. Once I made up my mind, I was done. It was over, and it
Yes.
backed away, just like the tide went out.
Yes. So I
So
I feel like that time in the hospital when it was, you know, I just didn't think I could do any better. I felt like that's when that planted a seed and really started to shift your mindset, and you were able to, what I would say, pull in, however you want to call it, burial, from like this other kind of really cool synchronicity that happens with your script, because you're also a writer at this point, which your book is so well written. Oh my gosh, your imagery, the all of it is amazing. It really is.
thank you, Lori.
And so you start to shift your mindset into more self-esteem, more self-worth. You meet Burial, and he becomes he was a writing teacher at the college, and he became a different kind of teacher as well for you. I felt like that was really kind of another pivotal point. So tell us about Burial and that.
Well, as I was recovering from being in the hospital, I remembered I had met him at an event at the Oakland Museum, and he was a creative writing teacher and a playwright. And so I wound up going to his, after the hospital, I wound up going to his creative writing class and learning about different forms of writing. And one of the things was playwriting. And so I wrote a play in there, and he decided to produce the play. He had just been named the director of what was called then the Western Addition Cultural Center in San Francisco. It's now like the African American Cultural Center or something like that in San Francisco. And he wanted to produce it as part of a trilogy. And I was just thrilled because I'd never had my work done. And he was very encouraging, inspiring, just, you know, a really bright light after a lot of darkness in my life. And to hear the things that I had written, like out of pain in the middle of the night, spoken by actresses on a stage was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so we were scheduled to, this was in 1978, we were scheduled to open in June, and 10 days before opening night, Burial got killed by a drunk driver in San Francisco on Geary Street. And, you know, that set off a whole other bunch of stuff in motion. But in the end, the plays went on. And it was a very hard reality for me. That's the first death I ever went through that was just, I couldn't get it. You know, I just was like, I felt like I had to know what happened in that moment between when he was here and when he wasn't. And there was just no way to know. So I was kind of like in a daze for a while after that, but his influence stays with me forever.
Yeah. And so here was this positive man, you know, in your life, encouraging you, empowering you, inspiring you, teaching you how to be an amazing writer and playwright, and just really getting you plugged into that whole world, produces a play. And you were good friends. I think maybe lovers at one point for a little while. But anyway, what I'm getting to is it could have been you in the car that night.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of been, you know, like the dark side of my Forrest Gump journey, is that it could have been me a whole bunch of times.
Yes. And those are the
I lived around the
synchronicities.
corner. I
Yeah.
lived around the corner from People's Temple, and I was like searching for the same thing all those people were, but
Mm-hmm.
I never walked in it. My book opens, as you know, I got arrested,
Yeah.
and I was in an elevator at Sybil Brand Jail in Los Angeles, going up the elevator, and the guards brought in three other girls, and I was like, the vibe in the elevator was just, I thought the elevator was going to crash. And then I looked at them, and they all looked exactly like me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Manson girls, and they
Yeah.
had already been convicted, the three that were convicted of the Tate LaBianca murders. And so more than once, um, you know, my life has been detoured
Mm-hmm.
in ways it could have been. I mean, you know, who's to say what could have and what couldn't have? But
Yes.
it's just, you know, the grace of God that has kept me here, whereas a lot of people my age didn't make it. I mean,
Yes.
Burrell was only 34 when he got killed. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
But
and still he's a presence in my life. And my friend Gloria Weinstock, who was with me as an actress in that movie, in that play.
okay. So this, you know, another big blow. You finally get some positive male influence in your life, and he's kind of ripped from it. But the next thing that I want to go to, because here's a whole bunch of more loss, but yet there was like these synchronicities to it, the left-handed circle, all of that. We're not
Yeah.
saying anything. Your book is so good. Everybody, you need to go read this book. But you meet people and you wind up at Smokey Robinson's house because you're going to give him the business, right, about some of the words.
I'm going to
some
give
of
my
his
indictment.
lyrics.
Like, why did you lie to me? Why did you and all those Motown people tell me, you know, my world is empty without you, babe? I mean, come on now. And I said, and that was just a whole, you know, left-handed synchronicity circle that took me around to meeting him through a woman named Patty Henley, who played another part in my life that was really important. But I said to him, and this was before I knew anything about what I was looking for, I said, if you would have just changed the word you in all those songs to the word God, they would have made sense. But as it is now, you know, you got me into a lot of trouble. And he just, I don't know if he thought I was crazy, but he was so friendly and he was so nice. And he's like, well, you know, artists never really know what they're doing. And I'm like, really? Is that like, are you taking the fifth on this?
I
But
kind
at
of
the
like
end of the
that because I'm like, that's a good
at the end
point.
of the day, you know, I actually had to wind up agreeing with him because that is the truth. Sometimes we don't really know what it is we're saying. And if you overthink it, you lose the art. So, you know, like I said in the book, Bob Dylan never bothers. He leaves it up to everybody else to figure out what he's saying. He doesn't know.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And they make a career out of it, and he just keeps on going and saying what he has to say. So
Yeah.
I accepted that, and that began a very fun time for me. The woman who brought me there was one of his singers, backup
Mm-hmm.
singers,
Mm-hmm.
named Patty Henley, and she was actually the reason why that circle was created, that synchronicity was created, not for him. Because when I showed him my indictment, and then I was like, oh, okay, and then I just went like, let's just be friends.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
see,
Patty was the
good.
one that really took me to where I needed to go as a person.
Okay, because I it was the necklace, you know, that I thought was kind of the biggest piece of that whole thing when you're hugging out the door and you see his necklace that says,
It said, try God.
yeah,
But it's like, but that wasn't it. You see, the thing is, he had on the necklace, and I'm like, maybe he knows more than he's saying he knows. But at the end of the day, the person that I became friends with, she took me there to meet
yes,
him because I
right,
had told
right,
her, you
yeah,
know, that I was interested in Motown music and what it had meant to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
But she became the person who led me to the what I called the answer of what
yes,
I was really looking for.
yes,
Like,
yeah,
what is soul? What is behind all of this? What is it about? Because at that time I was doing an African dance. I was still listening to James Brown and all the Motown music, and the music was getting to me, but the words didn't make any sense.
mm-hmm.
And then I met Patty, and we stayed friends. And then one day I was turned on the radio on a Sunday, which normally I didn't listen to. And the music was the same, but all of a sudden the lyrics weren't like, nobody loves me, so I'm going to kill myself.
Right.
They were God can do anything and
Yes.
Jesus is, Lord. And I was like, oh my God, I had never heard gospel music. And that was the piece missing in my puzzle.
Yes.
From, rhythm and blues, Motown, Stax, and African. That was the piece that was missing.
That's why I love the necklace, because you'd tried so many things, and here it was like, well, try God, try God now, and so you did, you started listening to the gospel music, and that was kind of bringing some peace to your soul. And then other things happened. I'm going to skip up to, you eventually moved back to LA. Your parents have both died, and you move into your dad's old art studio.
Right.
Yes. And so tell us about that time.
Well, I never wanted to move back to LA. I was really happy. I lived in Oakland for 16 years. That's where most of my real growth took place. But I really got the message that after my parents died, they left me their property, and I just got a message I needed to go. So I went back there, but I couldn't really afford to live in the house. There was a regular house, and then my dad was an artist. He was a calligrapher. He had a structure in the back, which is where I am now. And so I lived back there, and I, rented out the front. And I came back here in 1987, and I knew somewhere in the back of my mind that it had something to do with my daughter, but I didn't know what.
So it was there that you kind of began to let yourself maybe think even more about her. You knew she was 18, and it was appropriate. You started to feel the pull, right?
I had felt the pull all my life.
Yeah.
And I had begun in the 70s, because I came so close to dying. On the operating table, I was 15 minutes away from death, and then the piano player and blah, blah, blah. I had thought of her all of her life. And in the mid-70s, I made contact with the Department of Adoptions, because we had a closed adoption. And they told me, they gave me some information. They sent me some photos that had been taken of her as an infant when she was in foster care. And they said, you can just put whatever you want in our file, and if she ever looks for you, we'll give it to her, but doesn't have any identifying info. So I kept up this communication with them. And then when she turned 18, I figured, you know what, which was 1985, the same year that my parents died. I said, if she's anything like me, she's going to search. This was before the internet and all that. You could go to these databases like ALMA, Adoptees Liberty Movement Association, and register with your time of birth and birthday and all that stuff for it to be found. So when she turned 18, I registered, and then I never heard from her. And I was like, this is kind of weird. And then when I got to LA, I was at someone's house, and I saw this girl on Star Search, and she looked a lot like me, but she was clearly of mixed background. My daughter's father is Black. And that kind of propelled me. Once I saw her, it was like finally it was broken. And I got this message that year, she needs to be found by you.
Yes.
Wasn't I needed to go find her. She needs to be found by you. And what that really wound up being was because of the fact that she thought I was dead. So she wasn't going to come looking for me.
Yes.
And so I started the search for my daughter, and I had to use a lot of back doors because, again, there's no internet, there's no DNA, there's none of that stuff. And finally, and I hit a lot of dead ends, and then finally someone suggested I use a bounty hunter.
I love it.
And sure enough, he found her, but she kept saying she wasn't her.
Yeah.
And it took another year or two for her to finally answer the phone and go, yes, this is me. When I had her name. I'd gotten that through somebody else.
But
And
that was the time that you called personally, right? You had her number. It was when you called that she said her name.
no,
Oh, it was the bounty hunter.
the bounty hunter,
Yeah.
the bounty hunters had found her through employment and all that.
Yeah.
And they called her and they said, is this, and then they gave her
Yes,
name.
that's right.
And she'd say, no, this isn't. You have the wrong number. Okay. So finally, this one day, the bounty hunter called and said he was calling from the DMV. I would not let them tell her why they were calling because I wanted it to be me. She was going to reject me. I wanted it personal.
Sure.
So for whatever reason, and I do know the reason now, she said, yes, this is her. And he said, okay, I'm just checking on your driver's license or whatever. And then he called me and he said, this is really her. This is her number. And so when I called her, Alma had given me like a script. My counselor, I'd gone to counseling groups. And I suggest this for anyone in what they call now the constellation, because it includes donor parents and, snowflake babies, which are frozen embryos and all that. I mean, just all kinds of family of origin things. Support groups are really good, because they get you. Your friends and a regular person is not necessarily going to get you. And, so she told me, okay, when you call, the first thing you do is you say, I'm calling long distance. I'm having problems with my phone. Could you write down my number just in case we get disconnected?
Love that. Love that.
That way, if they freak out, they have your number and they can call back.
Yeah,
so I did smart. That. And then I just started saying, my name is so-and-so. I'm looking for someone that in my family that I haven't seen for a long time. And I hear a gasp. And then I said, and that person was born on blah, blah. And then all of a sudden my script was down to here. She goes, are you my mother? I go, yeah. She goes, oh my God, I wanted to know you all my life, but I thought you were dead.
Oh.
So that was like kaboom.
Yes.
And we talked and talked and talked. And then she lived in Oklahoma City. So I made plans to go there and meet her. And it was just unbelievable. And what was really funny, when I saw her, I was like, wow, I couldn't really figure out who she looked like. And then I realized she's the spitting image of my mother when my mother was young.
Man.
And I'm like, man, this is your karma, okay? Just beautiful. And we had just a profoundly beautiful reunion. And then my friend who was in the movie The Color Purple knew Oprah. And she said, would you like to have it documented on video? I'm like, I don't know what. And so they wound up sending a camera crew to Oklahoma City to catch us when I got off the plane. And then we went on the Oprah show about 2 weeks later. Oprah used to do a lot. This was in 1991. She used to do a lot of reunion interviews.
Yes, I
we
probably saw yours.
Mine is on my website. If anybody wants to see it, it's on my website, SaleemaNimoy.com. And that this is the 30th anniversary of our reunion.
Wow.
So, yep, 30 years ago. So we've known each other longer than we haven't, but that still doesn't, repair a lot of the damage that each of us has to deal with from the whole thing.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And
but I'm a happy mom.
Yes. Yeah. And so your book, we're kind of, out of time now. There's so much more that's in there. But it kind of came full circle from the first chapter really to the end. You have a beautiful reunion with your daughter. She's been looking for you. had wanted to know you. I'll put it that way. She'd been wanting to know you her whole life. I just thought, what a gift, and
It was.
you so deserved it. You
Thank
so
you.
deserved it. And so, is there any kind of last words you would want to say to the people listening?
I think you've pretty much wrapped it up. It's there's a lot of takeaways that I evidently have put in their story because my story goes to a lot of different places. And I'm grateful for everybody who it touches in one way or another. So.
And it's for it's not just for women at all. It's
No,
not
no.
female. It's male. Here it is. Since I lost my baby, it's a coming of age story in the 60s and 70s. There's so much more in this book that is kind of mind blowing. Actually, I wish we had more time to get to it, but it's available on Amazon. Go get it. It's so worth your time and worth your read.
It's
Selena.
available everywhere, not just Amazon.
Oh, okay.
And if you go to my website, the first chapter is on my website. You can read. It's
Yes.
salimanimoy.com, and you can click on whoever you want to buy it from there.
Perfect.
But I've had men, people who love soul music,
Yes.
women, men, young people, older people,
Yes.
all different kinds of folks.
Yes, and of course. So, Salima, stick around.
Thank you.
Everybody else, thank you so much for watching today. And again, I cannot say how well written, how just excellent this book is. It's well worth your time. So,
Thank you, Lori.
aloha.